Good morning, Mr. Chief Justice, and may it please the court. My name is Robert John Durant III, and I'll be representing the petitioner in this matter. We ask this court for 2 minutes for rebuttal time. Ms. Andrews' First Amendment rights are protected because 1, Ms. Andrews' actions do constitute symbolic speech, and 2, Ms. Andrews' actions are not materially or substantially disruptive. Therefore, we ask this court to reverse the appellate court's decision. Ms. Andrews' actions are symbolic. Under the test this court laid down in Smith v. Washington, in order for speech to be considered symbolic, it must 1, be likely have intent to convey a particularized message, and 2, that message must be likely to be understood by those viewing it. Ms. Andrews' particularized message was opposition to Emma's green photo being removed from the school's yearbook. She did this by, on April 12th, holding up a school yearbook, announcing, "See the big picture, the whole picture," referencing Emma's green photo being removed from the school's yearbook. Ms. Andrews, on this day, you can infer that it was likely to be understood by those viewing it because she addressed students and teachers alike on that day. This case is similar to Blackwell. In Blackwell, this case is different. This case is similar to Blackwell, where the district court found in favor of the students because they found that their speech was not disruptive, and they had the environment to convey this message. This case is also similar to Spence v. Washington. In Spence.
Now, Mr. Durant, let me ask you a question. Wasn't there a disruption here, though? You're citing cases that they didn't find a disruption, but here, we have a situation where your client, Ms. Andrews, right? Your client was wearing a tuxedo, disrupting the class during an AP exam. Isn't that enough for a principal or a teacher to discipline her?
Your Honor, under the test this court laid down in Tinker v. Des Moines, in order for teachers have the right, schools have the right to censor speech when it causes a material or substantial disruption. Simply wearing an outfit does not merit this disruption. Since Ms. Andrews...
The outfit itself may not be a material disruption, but we're looking at the entire context, right? And here we have students whispering, we have students causing a disruption during a critical time, an AP exam. Don't we have to look at that?
Your Honor, yes, the court should have looked to these minor disruptions, but in Tinker it states that these disruptions must be material or substantially disruptive. Ms. Andrews did not cause this disruption. The students in Mr. George's class, Mr. George asked her to come up in front of the classroom and read an essay on Macbeth. Immediately, as soon as she stood up, the students started laughing. This happened twice. The disruption was not Ms. Andrews' fault. Furthermore, Mr. George asked Ms. Andrews to come outside, and he asked her to wear something more normal. Your Honor, what he meant by normal was, on April 24th, during an informal meeting, he said he could not tolerate Ms. Andrews' cross-dressing nonsense, stating Mr. George was not concerned about Ms. Andrews' tuxedo or this minor disruption that occurred in the classroom. He was more concerned about her unusual dressing, which is, this also relates to Ms. Miller. Ms. Andrews was opposing a school rule, a school decision that Ms. Miller has enforced. Ms. Miller took out Emma's green photo from the school yearbook because she's a female wearing male's attire, which was a tuxedo.
Well, how many people knew about that? How many people knew that the yearbook photo was censored and removed?
Your Honor, on April 1st, this is when advanced copies of the school yearbook came out. Ms. Andrews was notified from her peers on the school, notified by her fellow students that Emma's green photo was removed from the school yearbook because she was a female wearing a male tuxedo. Ms. Andrews decided to give voice to Ms. Emma's green message, which was she wanted to be different in the high school environment, and she did this by doing something that wasn't normal. Ms. Andrews wore this tuxedo, and it was likely to be understood because she stood up in front of Hendricks High School, saying, "See the big picture, the whole picture," and this is why it was likely to be understood by those viewing it.
Well, let me get back to the first question. I guess that's that issue here, is whether the fact that Ms. Andrews was wearing a tuxedo is actually speech. What is it about wearing something constitutes First Amendment protection?
Your Honor, and Ms. Andrews' tuxedo was symbolic speech. Her actions, the actions she did, see the big picture, that was the speech. And this teachers, Principal Belding, seemed to think that Ms. Andrews' actions were disruptive when they were not. Laughing and giggling happens every day in a high school environment, and this is normal. Mr. Alvarez, a chemistry teacher who had a problem with Ms. Walter MacArthur and Ms. Andrews, when Walter MacArthur passed her a note, sent her a text message, and Ms. Andrews responded with a note with her flyer, which was "See the big picture," her campaign slogan. Mr. Alvarez said this is just kids being kids, and that we should go on teaching our lessons. The teachers weren't concerned about the disruption. They were concerned about Ms. Andrews' tuxedo, which was symbolic speech. In Tinker, this court said that students do not surrender their First Amendment. Students do not shed their constitutional rights at the schoolhouse door, and this is why Ms. Andrews' speech should be condoned as symbolic speech and protected under the First Amendment.
Isn't Tinker distinguishable? Tinker, we're dealing with the Vietnam War, and we're also dealing with students who are wearing an armband. You know, an armband is just going around your wrist, not very sizable. But here we have a student, again, I don't think there's a war, this wasn't in the context of a war or an opposition to a war, but this was just a student wearing a completely different outfit, a tuxedo.
Your Honor, we should look to as the context when Ms. Andrews wore the tuxedo. Ms. Andrews, the Vietnam War was a historical event, so it was obvious that students and teachers understood the message that Tinker that was in the Tinker case. Ms. Andrews, this was a campaign, a high school campaign. This is widely popular in high schools, in everyday high schools. Students wanted to get elected. This is why students were likely to. This is another reason why students were likely to understand the message that Ms. Andrews tried to convey.
Counselor, you cited Tinker and stated that students don't shed their constitutional right at the door. But isn't discipline important in schools?
Yes, Your Honor. Discipline is important in schools, and this court should defer to teachers' opinion, but not when teachers are clearly against Ms. Andrews because she's opposing a school rule.
But that wasn't clear, was it? I mean, you're characterizing that she's in opposition to a rule or an action that the school has taken, but I think isn't there some reasonable debate as to the ambiguity of her message?
Your Honor, Mr. George was concerned about cross-dressing. Ms. Miller was concerned about Ms. Andrews fighting, trying to overturn a decision she made. This case is fundamentally about a girl who tried to convey an important message, which was not disruptive. Laughing, giggling, and note passing happens every day in a high school environment. This court should affirm this further, and conclude furthermore, this court should reverse the appellate court's decision. Thank you.